Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are immersing ourselves, really getting into the quiet yet incredibly powerful world of Jon Fosse, the 2023 Nobel laureate in literature.
That's right.
And if you're looking for a writer who somehow manages to articulate those really deep parts of being human, the things we usually struggle to find words for, well, Fosse is definitely your guy.
He really is. And our mission today, essentially, is to unpack why the Nobel Committee chose him. Their reason was very precise. Fosse was honored for his innovative plays and prose, which give voice to the unsayable.
Which is such a compelling phrase, isn't it?
It really is.
Because it suggests his power actually lies in what he doesn't say, what he leaves out.
Exactly. The silent speaks.
I find that totally fascinating. You know, in a world that's just saturated with noise, with information overload, Fosse's work, it feels less like reading and more like tuning into this almost silent frequency, like whispers from the edge of existence, maybe. So to really grasp his mastery, I think we need to start with the man himself, the environment that shaped him.
Agreed. The biography here is crucial. It's totally inseparable from his art. Jon Fosse, born in Haugesund, Norway, back in 1959.
Right.
And that's not just, a birthplace. It's fundamental. He grew up on the West Coast, near the sea, the fjords, surrounded by that huge, quiet, sometimes pretty lonely Nordic landscape.
And that atmosphere, that stillness, it gets into his work.
Completely. He internalized those rhythms, that deep quietness, and it literally became the structure of his writing later on.
And he didn't just burst onto the scene as a playwright, right? He had this academic background first.
Yeah, he studied comparative literature at the University of Bergen. His first novel, Red, Black or Rout, Spart in Norwegian, came out in 1983.
And even then, early on, you could see the seeds of his major theme.
Oh, absolutely. Even in that first book, before the international fame, he was already exploring that intense loneliness, thinking about death, wrestling quietly with faith. Those themes stayed with him.
So the novel was the starting point, the lab maybe, but then came theater.
Theater was the catalyst, definitely. That pivot in the 1990s is key. He starts writing plays, and he takes that very internal, almost meditative prose style.
And strips it down even more.
Exactly. Strips it right down for the stage. His plays are minimalist, they're rhythmic. And crucially, they didn't just add to the scene, they really fundamentally revolutionized modern European drama. They offered this stark, slow, quiet alternative.
Okay, but wait. How does work that relies so much on stillness, on repetition, on quiet, how does that achieve global reach? Doesn't that seem counterintuitive in our, loud, fast-paced, plot-hungry world?
It does seem like a paradox, doesn't it? But I think his quiet mastery is exactly why it travels so well. His work transcends language barriers easily because the core emotion isn't carried by complex words or intricate plots.
It's carried by the structure, the rhythm.
Precisely. The structure, the rhythm, the pauses, that feeling translates whether you're reading it in Norwegian or English or Japanese. And that long, steady influence solidified his status. He's now one of the world's most performed living playwrights. Translated into over 40 languages, those pauses in Norwegian, they work just as powerfully as silence is felt anywhere in the world.
That makes so much sense. The core feeling becomes the universal language, which I guess leads us perfectly into talking about his style. Because if you pick up Fosse, the style is the first thing that hits you. It's different.
Oh, definitely. And what's fascinating is how his style is so deliberately built on, accents. He uses very few words. But the words he does use, he repeats them, sometimes almost obsessively. And the long pauses, the white space on the page and the text, those become the real containers for the emotion.
So it's not just emptiness.
Not at all. It gives his work this relentless, almost musical quality.
And the dialogue itself.
Yeah.
People often say it's anti-plot. It's not really there to push a story forward from A to B.
Yeah.
So if it's not about plot, what is the dialogue doing?
Good question. It's purely focused on emotional resonance, dredging up memory, that kind of spiritual searching. When critics call his plays existential music, that's what they mean. The structure itself, the pattern of the language, the repetition, the pauses, that becomes the content. It's not just what the characters are saying, but the actual sound, the rhythm of their speaking, that carries the weight of their anxiety or their longing or their faith.
So that repetition isn't just a stylistic tick, it's the mechanism. It forces you, the reader or the audience member, to slow right down and just sit inside the feeling.
Precisely, yeah. If a character says something like, I don't know, I just don't know, maybe 50 times.
Right.
That phrase stops being about intellectual uncertainty and becomes pure emotional weight. It turns into the sonic thing, representing their confusion or maybe their dread. And the silence that follows, that's where you, the listener, have to fill the gap. You bring your own feelings into it. You sort of co-create the mood.
That idea of pulling the reader into the emotional space is brilliant. And he tackles these huge, profound themes: death, love, faith, time passing, but without the usual explanations. You mentioned he's rooted in a kind of Christian mysticism. How does that come through without it becoming, preachy or obviously religious?
That's the real subtlety of Fosse, I think. His mysticism just surfaces quietly, usually through an image or maybe just an intense, often hard to explain feeling of transcendence or connection. It's never dogma.
It's more like a feeling.
Exactly. It's a profound, almost primal longing for something beyond the material. It comes across as this kind of spiritual restlessness, a search for meaning within the silence, rather than some big announcement of belief.
He seems to really get that the deepest truths often lie in accepting the mystery, yeah. Because he said himself, quite directly, I write about what I don't understand: silence, faith, love, death.
That's a fantastic quote. But if he's writing about what he doesn't understand, how does he stop it from just becoming obscure, like completely ungraspable? What keeps the reader anchored?
I think the anchor is the rhythm, which connects right back to his origins, to that landscape.
Ah, okay.
The repetition in his language is not random. It creates what's been called a rhythm of thought that mirrors natural cycles. People often compare it to waves hitting the shore, that endless ebb and flow.
And that ties back to Norway itself.
Yeah.
That vast, quiet, sometimes maybe bleak landscape. But it's filled with this invisible cyclical movement. The language starts to feel inevitable, almost like part of the environment itself. It grounds the most abstract spiritual searching in something tangible, something physical and repetitive.
That idea of language as environment brings us perfectly to his huge prose work. Septology. I mean, creating this massive world out of one single sentence. That sounds like the ultimate literary endurance test.
It is genuinely staggering.
Yep.
Septology, published in 3 books covering 7 parts between 2019 and 2021. It really is the magnum opus of his prose work. It tells the story of an aging painter, Assel, who's reflecting on, well, everything: art, faith, memory, identity. And the choice to write it all, like 1,250 pages in one continuous sentence.
Was technically amazing.
Technically, yes, it's a marvel. But beyond the sheer discipline of it, what does that continuous sentence actually do to you as a reader? How does that work?
That's what I want to know. Does it feel overwhelming?
It creates this incredibly hypnotic, almost trance-like state. There are no full stops, no traditional chapter breaks giving you a chance to pause or segment the experience.
Wow.
This relentless, seamless flow perfectly mirrors how consciousness and memory actually work, right?
Yeah.
Blurring the lines between now and then, between one thought and the next, you get kind of trapped, but willingly, inside Al's mind as he navigates this really profound spiritual quest. It turns the book into something like a modern spiritual epic.
So while Septology might have sealed the Nobel deal, his global reputation was really built on those earlier plays. We should probably mention some specific titles, like The Name or Dream of Autumn, maybe. Someone's Gonna Come. They all seem to share that intense focus on human connection, anxiety, faith.
They do. And
Yeah.
speaking of the plays, he gets called the Beckett of the North all the time. It's a handy label, I guess, but does it risk kind of minimizing what makes him unique? Are there specific things Fosse does on stage that pull him away from just pure theater of the absurd, like Beckett?
That's a great point. While he definitely shares Beckett's minimalism, the feel of his work is fundamentally different, I think. Where Beckett often gives you this stark existential bleakness, characters waiting forever for nothing.
Godot never arrives.
Right. Fosse's work, though, it nearly always carries this deep current of searching, sometimes even hope. The silences in Beckett often feel like futility, emptiness. But the silences in Fosse, they often feel like the characters are actively listening for something.
Listening for transcendence or connection.
Exactly. He feels gentler somehow, more spiritual, often more concerned with the sheer mystery of human connection itself, rather than just its inevitable failure.
And that unique quality, that impact, it's felt really strongly, even by his peers, like fellow Norwegian literary giant Karl Ove Knausgård, who certainly knows a thing or two about writing epics.
Right, Mr. My Struggle.
That's the one. He's a huge admirer of Fosse. Knausgård famously said that Fosse's writing feels like prayer.
That is incredibly high praise. And it perfectly captures the kind of reverence, maybe, that you need to bring when you approach his work. Which brings us back, full circle almost to that connection with nature and language. Fosse himself used this really powerful image once. He described writing as sailing on the dark fjord of language.
That's beautiful. It suggests this slow, careful movement through deep, unknown waters. No
Yeah.
speedboats, no easy map reading, just the patience required to explore what's down there beneath the surface. It really sums up the experience of reading him perfectly.
So what does all this mean for you listening right now? Maybe you're ready to jump into the world of Jon Fosse. Where should you start?
Good question. If you're really drawn to that hypnotic flowing prose we talked about, then definitely start with Septology. But if you want to experience the structure of his silence and rhythm perhaps more directly, maybe pick up one of his key plays. The Name is great, or Someone is Gonna Come. Plays are often quicker reads, too.
Good point.
They let you grasp that unique rhythm much more immediately.
And here's the crucial reading advice, I think, for approaching Fosse. You absolutely have to adjust your expectations. This is not about speed reading.
Yeah.
Be patient. Read slowly. Treat the lines almost like poetry. Yeah. Let that repetition just wash over you. And most importantly, listen to the pauses. Don't just skip over the white space on the page.
Because that white space, that silence, that's the heart of his message. Fosse shows us that silence isn't just emptiness, it's another kind of language entirely, rich with unexpressed feeling, with spiritual longing. He proves, really, that not everything can or should be explained in neat words. Some truths just have to be felt, in that rhythmic, quiet, shared space he creates.
So if Jon Fosse really did succeed in giving voice to the unsayable, maybe we can leave you with this final thought to chew on. What essential human truths might we be missing when we focus only on explicit explanations in our own lives, ignoring the rhythm, the pauses, the silences in how we communicate? Perhaps the most important things we convey are the things we actually leave unsaid, something to mull over until our next deep dive.
Subscribe to the Timeless Tales podcast. Your stories, your time.